Good morning from the UK, where it's 11 a.m. GMT, and we're just looking at the top of the crypto market because yesterday, as I'm sure you are all aware, Bitcoin charged ahead around 10-11% and has consolidated strongly above 3,400. In fact, at one point yesterday, it hit 3,600. But as you can see, there's been a little bit of a pullback since then, and that goes for the other top crypto assets, as you can see here. So the big question, obviously, is this the bottom for crypto? And today is the anniversary of crypto, or rather Bitcoin, reaching its all-time high near 20,000, which coincidentally happened at the same time as the CME and CBOE had introduced their futures. That seemed to have triggered a lot of shorting and the beginning of the bear market. Okay, although we should add to that thesis, but the combined volumes of the CME, Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and the Chicago Board of Exchange, a much smaller rival, both based in Chicago. But the combined order books, I think, for daily volumes is something like 9,000, which is almost statistically insignificant for the derivatives market. Okay, so let's not dwell on that too much and get back to where we are today. Is it the beginning of the end of the bear market? Well, obviously it's too early to say, I think, because we've been here before, haven't we? In particular for the several weeks that Bitcoin stayed at 6,000. That was a reasonable assumption of being a floor, but that floor broke, as we know, and broke rather dramatically to leave us where we are today. But off the lows around 3,000. So it does beg the question, is this the beginning of a consolidation period for Bitcoin? Let's have a quick look at the Ikimoku cloud here. And as you can see, we've had a massive breakthrough here through the cloud. This is on the 2-hour chart. We could change that actually to the day chart, just to give us a bit more perspective on just how serious the resistance is. As you can see, around 4,700 to 5,000, that's when that's going to be some battle to get anywhere near in terms of a gap between those two positions. So there's a hell of a long way to go. And if you want to look at a trend, that is very, very much still a cliff edge downtrend. So yeah, it is way too early to talk about a bottoming for Bitcoin. Nevertheless, this spike here that we saw a moment ago on the 2-hour, would have to at least get past this 3,537 you see here. And of course, here at 4,200, those 2 points would need to be surmounted before the real significant break and downtrend could begin to take place It should be the attack on the cloud here, turning that red into green, so that the resistance becomes the support for the price, which did actually start to happen here. That was a bit of a fake out, wasn't it? It didn't last. Okay, let's just go back to CMC, because something else of great interest happened yesterday, which is the massive run-up of EOS. And so big was that run-up, and it's now overtaken Stellar, as you can see. Not a lot in it, but it has done it. And Stellar was doing quite well yesterday as well, as all the other top coins, but EOS even more so. So what's behind that? Most people are looking at wallet openings, and let's do the same. In particular, this tweet here shows us what's been happening with activity on the network. As you can see, ETH has greatly outperformed Bitcoin over the last few years, while EOS is greatly outperforming both of them last year. And the price correlates almost perfectly to these metrics. So let's just take a closer look here. Now there's EOS, the grey. As you can see, the volumes here are way above both Ethereum, purple here, and Bitcoin in the red. And that's excluding inactives, transactions, and inactive addresses. So that is certainly buoying the price. Again, too early to say whether this is the beginning of the end of the bear market for EOS, because that is dependent on the wider market. But it is making a lot of progress on the dev side. That's to say, a lot of developments are ongoing. People might be familiar with the most popular apps, I think, on the EOS network at the moment are betting apps, but they do seem to be getting a bit of traction. So that's interesting. I was also, I noticed on some of the WhatsApp groups I'm in for EOS, and there's a bit of tech that's come out where you can transfer ERC20 tokens, I presume calls it as teleporting, and convert them into EOS. So that sounds a bit like an atomic swap, something similar, which people are talking about. That could be quite useful for EOS, making it easier for devs to move off Ethereum and onto EOS. So that's at least part of the explanation. A lot of the rest of it could just be momentum trading. That's to say, traders pile in behind a rising curve, pushing it higher. As people will be familiar with, hopefully, EOS ended its ICO. There were all sorts of, it was a year-long ICO, which is unusual, obviously, and something like 4 billion was raised. And there were all sorts of governance issues which went down. And it seems to have got over those hurdles. And perhaps the most recent other issue was concerning Daniel Larimer. Dan, the man, is basically responsible for building EOS. Obviously, he had a lot of help, but it was his baby. And he's the chief technical officer at Block One, which is the company behind EOS. And he made a statement a couple of weeks back. I think it's probably around here. When's that? 3rd or 4th? 2nd, 3rd of December. And he said he was working on another coin which set alarm bells ringing with those committed to EOS, wondering if this was a precursor to Larimer announcing that he would be leaving EOS and moving on to develop another asset instead. And why people had those suspicions is on his past form at Steam and his other one before that. What was it? Gosh, Bitcoin. Might have got it wrong, but yeah. Anyway, it's definitely Steam is one of his babies, and he kind of develops it, gets it out the door, hangs around for a bit, and then moves on to something else. He maybe just got one of those brains. And there's people that once he's done something, just loses the oomph and the interest, and goes on to other things to keep his brain ticking over. An inquisitive brain, one might say. Anyway, so when he made that announcement, that kind of triggered the beginning of a new downtrend within the downtrend, if you like, as people reacted negatively to that. But he's since reassured the community that he has no such intention of departing the shores of EOS. And judging by the price action, people seem to be believing him. Let's just do a quick refresh. Also, yeah, okay. Not much happened there. Okay, dokie. So, what else could we look to that's behind the resurgence or the surge in the Bitcoin price and the prices of other top coins? And it's actually a pretty broad advance. As you go down the top 100, it's pretty much green all the way. Yep, you can call that a very broad advance. So what's behind it? Obviously, as has been the case for the better part of this bear market, it's Bitcoin that leads the way with very much the leadership position of the market. And of course, its dominance. Actually, that's fallen a little bit. That makes sense. What's going on with some of these other coins? XRP, 13% up. Had a release from them this morning about more partnerships in Asia. And what we've just talked about here, EOS. So yeah, BTC dominance has dropped back from, I think yesterday it was from like 54.9, it's now 54.3. So yeah, what else can we look to explain what's going on here? Now, Tom Lee, you'll all be familiar with, of Fundstrats, probably the biggest crypto bull on, on Wall Street, the biggest crypto bull. Now, he suggested that fair price, not suggested, he's arguing that fair price, fair value for Bitcoin is around 13,800 to 14,800. Let's just call the midpoint on that. So around 14,400 or so. Now that's obviously a long way off from where we are today. And further out, he's talking about price of 150,000 on the basis of Bitcoin getting 7% of Visa's 4.5 billion account holders. So he's still very, very bullish, and is basically arguing that the market has massively mispriced Bitcoin. That will be music to the ears of many hodlers. And that may have helped a little to firm up positive sentiment in the market. And Vice Ratings, who are not much loved, it has to be said, in the crypto space, which probably is because when they launched their ratings earlier this year, when was it, March, they gave Bitcoin a rating of C-. It should be added that no token has ever been given an A by Vice Ratings as of yet. But yeah, C- on the basis of its poor technology, which I think was one of the biggest factors. Its lack of scaling. We'll come back to that actually a little bit later. And anyway, they made a big call on the 11th of December. BTC is getting to such low levels that it's becoming one of the best buying opportunities of the year. As a store of value, Bitcoin is here to stay. We truly think it's the least speculative investment a person can make in crypto right now. That's pretty much, I'd say, a buy call, which puts in the floor at 3,000. So whether that does hold, we'll see. That's to say, if there's another sell-off and the price moves back towards 3,000, if it starts to bounce strongly off it, as it has just done, as in yesterday's 10% move, then there could be something in that. And it's worth taking note of Vice Ratings, even though they are dismissed in crypto land very often, because they've been around a long time, serving America's equity investors for something like 46 years. So they know what they're talking about in the equity world. And perhaps they do also in the crypto world. We shall see. So that may have helped things along. Also, yesterday, that Coinbase is running 12 days of Christmas. What's that called? 12 days of Coinbase. They've had these announcements every day. It'll be interesting to see what comes up today. They're all still in bed in America. Yeah, so they've been doing lots of little airdrops and stuff this week, giving money to refugees, to Venezuelan families. 50 Venezuelan families got some Zcash, and I think they're going to be donating a little bit every day, I think. US customers can now withdraw cash instantly to their PayPal account. Waiting for that to come to Europe. That'll be nice. I like PayPal. Oh, that's another issue to come to, if I remember what Facebook are doing. Anyway, yeah, I was talking about their latest, which is yesterday. They announced that you can now convert crypto to crypto. That's to say, they have crypto trading pairs not rolled out. I didn't notice in my account. Maybe they're live in the States. But that's took people by surprise, or maybe not by surprise, because the recent activity from Coinbase is making it look more and more like all the other exchanges. They haven't got anywhere near there yet, but the top end ones. Because Coinbase, as we know, used to just list a couple of coins, Bitcoin and ETH and Litecoin. And when they added Bitcoin Cash, so that, it used to be seen as like the Rolls Royce because they had a limited number of assets, only the best, and only the most liquid, as they saw it, presumably. But they've upended that whole approach and are now rapidly listing on Coinbase Pro initially, and then moving them on to Coinbase. Most recently, listing what some might call pejoratively shit coins, such as Mana, MANA, of Decentraland. And they may be listing Engine, which is a project I like actually, in the gaming space. So they were bottom fishing, if you like, and that is because an obvious reason that exchanges are suffering as trading volumes fall, so they've got to chase wherever the liquidity is, and some of these coins have liquidity. And they're doing some of the ERC20 because their engineering is set up to do that. It's not because they necessarily think that they're better than, you name the other big coins that they haven't listed yet, EOS, for example, XLM, for example, and of course, the big one, XRP, that everyone has been clamoring for them to list, but that is probably coming soon. So, it's quite a clever marketing wheeze, and that's caught a bit of attention, and I think that may well have added to a bit of positives, mood music around crypto. Other news I found significant and worthy of a mention is the Brazilian bank, state-owned bank in Brazil, called the Brazilian National Social Development Bank, is going to release a stable coin on Ethereum. And we saw Ethereum doing nicely, not as well as some of the other ones actually, but interesting to see if we can get back above 100. And as we know, there's been a rash of stable coins. Speaking of stable coins, Coinbase announced they're going to be supporting USDC. Announced that on the 16th. Stable coins are all the rage. But this is slightly different in the sense that with the other stable coins, it's how can we put it? It's a differential value vis-a-vis Tether, and Tether is basically used by traders to get out of the market when prices are falling. So it's used as a proxy for the dollar on exchanges that don't have fiat. And in this case, the BNDES token will be backed 1-for-1 by the real, Brazilian real, and it's been used to fight corruption and the misallocation of funds, because it will be totally trackable. So instead of handing over funds to regional governmental entities, and those funds disappearing into various corrupt channels, because, as we know, cash is peer-to-peer, and crypto is peer-to-peer, but cryptographically secured and trackable. Well, this will be trackable, that's for sure. They're going to use it to fight corruption, to make it much harder for the underhand payments affecting oil commerce in many parts of the world. So this is going to be a very interesting use case. So that got a bit of news past couple of days, and would have helped cement in some people's minds the underlying fundamentals of crypto. And also, the Iranian government official said, I think it was yesterday, that crypto, or rather blockchain, let's be distributed ledger technology is a better way of putting it, could be key to reinvigorating the economy as it fights US sanctions. And the Iranian government is exploring releasing a national cryptocurrency a la Venezuela and the petro. I come to Google Trends just because talking about developing countries, I think it's reasonable to see it as a developing theme for crypto, as a place where adoption may well take root more quickly than elsewhere. And for a number of weeks now, South Africa has been at the top in terms of search interest on Google Trends. And basically, African countries dominate the top 5, as you can see. South Africa, Ghana, and Nigeria. We don't see Venezuela there. Or Brazil, for that matter. But the point still holds, which is in countries where perhaps the state has even less trust than it does in Western countries, crypto becomes particularly attractive as a store of value. Again, I'm not too sure about means of payment. And of course, store of value has been disrupted somewhat by the bear market, which means it's not the most efficient store of value. But if you get in and out of it quickly, in terms of using it as a trading mechanism, that's as a means of payment, then that could still work. But anyway, people are looking to it as a form of private money, presumably in these places. But it's also more than that, I would argue. The private money thing is how the Nigerian government's looking at it. They recently issued, not the government, but the financial regulator in the country recently issued an edict demanding that banks start clamping down on people and companies in the crypto space by not allowing them to have accounts at banks. And that created a massive uproar. I think they pulled back on that, or clarified it, as they might say. So they see it as something of a threat, although it's a very small one at this stage. But also, not just in the currency space, but more broadly, DLT can help developing countries to skip the stages of development seen elsewhere. So, a bit like how the mobile phone meant that much of Africa didn't go through the fixed line part of the development of telecommunications and went straight to mobile. And China's making mobile specifically for low bandwidth countries like the continent of Africa, which is not a country but a continent, obviously, and elsewhere. So DLT in that context could be very important for the development of these countries. Whether the government starts to see it that way is another matter. What's interesting, although I can just about see it here, I think that might be Kenya. Yes, that is Kenya, but it's not among the top 10. Okay, Venezuela gets in at 20. Because that is something of the tech hub of Africa, and it's a place to watch the developments. M-Pesa and Big Pesa, that's where they started out. Uganda is also another country which is making strides in the crypto space, and interest is growing both from the citizenry and the more far-sighted governments. So that could also be of some help in shoring up the Bitcoin price and crypto more broadly. Something else we want to talk about is Cheddar, which is a new, just trying to pull the screen down into the recording area for you so you can see their logo. It's a new business site with a tech orientation, and they ran an exclusive story on the 13th of December about Facebook's blockchain project and the hiring spree that Marcus, who heads it up, is on, and David Marcus, who came from PayPal. I mentioned PayPal a little bit earlier. We were talking about the 12 Days of Christmas. PayPal. Now, PayPal have an internal blockchain project which is used by employees. It's a kind of internal rewards program, and I would say they are using that as a test bed to learn about crypto, and that might be as a staging post for customer-facing developments. And PayPal is where Marcus came from, and he's been pulling in some more PayPal people, and they've now recruited about 40 employees, several of whom, I think it's about half a dozen, are former PayPal executives. And as I say, Marcus came from PayPal. Marcus was also, previous to this latest position, the head of Messenger, so he knows about messaging, and I'm sure he is aware of WeChat in China, which, although not on a blockchain, it is doing payments. In fact, China and Asia are way ahead on mobile payments, and Facebook will not will be very aware of that. Okay, so they are busy, Facebook, and a year or so ago, in his New Year message, Zuckerberg said he was looking at encryption and cryptocurrencies as two technologies that could help to mitigate some of the problems of centralized platforms like his own. We didn't actually go on to say that, but that was pretty obvious from what he was saying. Now, with Facebook's I saw on Seeking Alpha someone, an analyst describing Facebook as dead money. They have a problem, don't they, with data and data protection and privacy, among other things. Then we can talk also about fake news and disinformation. Now, all of these things are potentially fixable by blockchain. Its application. And so they're exploring that, but it's by no means certain, but it can be fixed. But with the resources of Facebook, the engineering talent of Facebook, and the scale of Facebook, whatever they do in crypto would be game changing. Some fear that it could actually kill off large sections of the industry, because imagine if Facebook launches a coin, wow, that could suck a lot of the money out of the crypto space and into Facebook, you might think. But there's another school of thought would have it, which I would subscribe to, which would be the halo effect. And whatever Facebook does will just light up in the consumer's minds the legitimacy of crypto, and that could lead to a massive uplift for the entire crypto industry. So these sorts of stories are, I would imagine, concentrating the minds of, here we are, WeChat, as I mentioned there, concentrating the minds of the institutions, those institutions who have already decided that they want to get into crypto, but they need to get into crypto, but even if they hate crypto, they need to have a foot in there so they don't miss out. So the FOMO is not so much among the burnt out consumers, but among the institutions that want to make sure that they have an input here. And so this will be a story that every single member of a leadership team of those institutions looking at the crypto space, their particular divisions that are doing that, they will be very much aware of what Facebook are doing, not the details of it, but the team that they are assembling. And your Visas and your MasterCards might need to worry a little bit, because it's just, think about the cryptocurrency side of things. If they launch some kind of payments service, you could see that how that could eat into Visa and MasterCard's cut of the payments world, which merchants aren't very keen on paying, but they have to. Same with Amex, although some of them choose not to, because Amex, I think, has the highest fees of all of these cards. Yeah, but that could really threaten their businesses. And it's not just payments, as I say, but that would certainly be one area that they must be looking at. And yeah, so I think that story would have helped firm the position of market participants. Okay. Let's just quickly go back to the price. So I just want to show you the Bitcoin Cash coins. So that is Bitcoin Cash, which was formerly Bitcoin Cash ABC, if we go back to the mid-November fork, and Bitcoin Cash SV. So Bitcoin Cash ABC now has the BCH ticker on most exchanges, and that's the same here at coinmarketcap. And Bitcoin SV did briefly overtake Bitcoin Cash last week, week before, in terms of value, but it's now slipped back and is the laggard, you might say, at $78 compared to $88. And when we talk about Bitcoin Cash, we need to, in the same breath, talk about Bitmain. We could also talk about Roger the so-called Bitcoin Jesus, who owns a Bitcoin.com mining pool, which is also a big supporter of Bitcoin Cash. But Bitmain, we're interested in because it is the biggest miner of Bitcoin in the world and Bitcoin Cash. And it's meant to be doing an IPO, isn't it? In Hong Kong. On the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. Excuse me. Well, I don't know if you've been following the rumour mill on Bitmain, but BTC King 555 has been talking a lot, tweeting a lot about Bitmain. The latest one, Bitmain has all but run out of the funds raised during summer. It has net liquidated 400,000 BCH and is now down to 750,000 BCH. All the BCH coming in from sales are being sold. Jihan will announce, as the CEO, will announce another wave of significant layoffs soon. So, they are suffering. They're suffering, one, because they had to throw a lot of hash rate onto the in the fights, the fork fight, to maintain their position and to beat back Craig Wright's SV. And that's cost them a pretty penny. But more fundamentally is the whole question of mining. Because, as you know, the Bitcoin price has fallen dramatically and keeps falling. And because of that, it is now below the price at which mining can be profitable. So the least efficient miners have had to turn off their rigs. And social media the past month or so in China, there's been all these pictures appearing, some of them not necessarily what they claim to be, but I presume some of them are, of mining equipment lying in the street unused, obviously, as people get out because there's no money to be made anymore. And JP Morgan's had a look at this, and it's probably worth quoting at length. Now, I think it was Tom Lee, or maybe it was somebody else, who argued that the break-even point for miners would provide the floor for the Bitcoin price, and the break-even was between 4,000 and 4,500. Well, that didn't happen. Anyway, JP Morgan reckons that it is now uneconomical to do the verification work, the proof of work on the Bitcoin network. So let's have a look at what they're saying. Can you see that? A little bit bigger. The latest decline in prices towards 3,000 per Bitcoin has also seen a sharp decline in the hash rate. This suggests that prices have declined to a point that mining is becoming uneconomical for some miners who have responded by turning their mining rigs off. What had been striking with the Bitcoin hash rate was that it peaked only recently at the end of October, i.e. much later than the peak in Bitcoin prices at the end of 2017. Combined with price declines, the surge in the mining activity in the first 10 months of the year, partly driven by chip manufacturers deploying miners to test their products and partly by miners adopting more efficient operations, created a collapse in the mining profitability from $4 a day for 1 terahash per second at the end of 2017 to 0.16 currently. Therefore, in the absence of any stabilization in prices, the least efficient miners were forced to exit mining activity abruptly. And look at the mining profitability. Yeah, last year, the run up in the price at the end of in December 2017, and then the collapse. That's a hell of a collapse. The point that JP Morgan are making about the hash rates not falling in line with the prices is interesting, because that suggests that the bigger miners, such as Bitmain and other Chinese mining firms, Kainan, eBay, were staying in the business because they were more efficient and were squeezing out the least less efficient. But the hash rate wasn't dropping much. So it does mean that they were making less and less money by staying in, by keeping the hash rate on the network, because the profitability collapsed in the earlier part of the year. So when they were mining for the second half of this year, they were racking up losses, or certainly not making very much in profits. And if the mining was going on in relatively high electricity areas, that could have been a big problem for some. Well, Iceland's doing quite well in the mining world. It has even cheaper electricity than China. So Bitmain, as I said, is doing its initial public offering on the Hong Kong exchange. And Coindesk had this story yesterday. Hong Kong exchange hesitant to approve Bitmain IPO. I bet they are hesitant. In fact, I'll be very surprised if this IPO goes forward. I'm very surprised indeed, because these companies, big miners, could well be out of business by this time next year or sooner, unless the price picks up. And what I was going to say about the hash rate, as a knowledgeable among you will be thinking is, well, okay, the hash rate's going down, but that shouldn't be too much of a problem, because the difficulty adjustment mechanism kicks in, and that will make it less difficult to mine Bitcoin as the hash rate falls. Well, that's true, but because, as JP Morgan pointed out, the hash rate still stayed high despite the fact that the price had gone down, means there's a kind of a disconnect, so that it takes time for the difficulty to catch up with a steep decline in the price. And if the price keeps declining as steeply as it is, and as quickly as it is, it's difficult for the difficulty mechanism, that was difficult to say, to keep up, to compensate for the falling rewards. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Bitmain IPO doesn't happen, unless something spectacularly changes in the marketplace between now and whenever they're meant to approve it, when they're dragging their feet. And the unnamed source says that Hong Kong exchange doesn't want to be the first exchange in the world to approve this and have one die on them. I think they are right to be worried about that. Okay, so some of the factors behind the 10% rise in the Bitcoin price yesterday, but also a little bit about what's going on in the rest of the market. Litecoin's been doing quite well, isn't it? And there's been a bit of profit taking today. There's also been some of interesting things going down, which might have helped speed some of that profit taking. So News BTC has a little story on what's going on in Asia at the moment. Japan reclassifying crypto. So Japan is the first country, or is it the only country in the G20 to recognise Bitcoin as legal tender earlier this year. That was one of the factors behind. Earlier in 2017, that was one of the factors behind the bull run. But now they're clarifying things yet, and they've lumped Bitcoin in with all the other altcoins and introduced a new category of crypto assets to differentiate Bitcoin from fiat currencies. So, as a point of law, crypto is not a currency, even though Bitcoin can be legal tender. And in Hong Kong, again, as you all know, ICOs are banned in China, mainland China. Hong Kong is also part of China, but has a different legal system and political system. And so all of the ICO business moved to Hong Kong, and that's created the same problems. And a story in the Nikkei Asian Review says that the Securities and Futures Commission is introducing a licensing system so that any investment funds with 10% or more dedicated to crypto will have to get a license. Also introducing a sandbox, regulatory sandbox, which is something that was developed by the UK Financial Services, the UK Financial Conduct Authority, so that blockchain startups can do their stuff without having to worry about breaking the law, and make sure that their product is compliant, and do that all on a test bed without falling foul of the regulator. So Hong Kong is going down the same route. Here we see, so as exchanges and other companies can test their products in a sandbox before coming to market, if they ever come to market. And it's putting greater emphasis on KYC. This is all the stuff that the G20 have been talking about, and they mentioned it in their final communique again last month after the Buenos Aires meeting. So expect more of that in the new year. There are some people in the industry that think it's going to destroy the good stuff about crypto in terms of privacy, but others, and we are in the others camp, which are those that think it's a necessary thing, regulation. If crypto wants to attract a mainstream audience, investors have to be protected. So know your customer and anti-money laundering regulations are important, and exchanges and other organizations, other companies should abide by them. And if they don't, there should be regulations to make them abide by those rules. Of course, there's always the danger of regulatory overreach, but we haven't got to that stage yet, to be honest. Unless you think that SEC in the States clamping down on suspect ICOs is overreach, I don't think so. he wants scammers. So, but whenever these sorts of talking points come up and news about regulations appears, the immediate knee-jerk reaction is to interpret them negatively. But in the medium to long term, I would say they are a big plus and absolutely central to the on-ramping of institutional money and, of course, little people's money like you and me. Okay, just before we kind of wrap up, on a lighter note, going back to Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SV and Bitcoin itself, there's an interesting interview with Calvin Ayre, who's on the Bitcoin SV side of things. He provides the hash rate to keep BSV in the game, whilst Dr. Craig Wright's N-Chain company does the dev work. And UK newspaper The Daily Express, which is quite big on crypto coverage. In fact, it has the most crypto coverage of any of the national news outlets in the UK. And I think they seem to be investing more into their coverage. So someone at the Express is a big high up is a Bitcoin believer, is a crypto believer. I think they get quite a lot of click-throughs. So even if they aren't believers, it's working for them. Anyway, so they have an interview of Calvin Ayre. That isn't it, Calvin Ayre, but I'm just down here. I've got a picture of him up here. I better not run the interview because I might get in trouble with YouTube. Anyway, yeah, so the stories actually come from CoinRivet. So they got some kind of a deal with CoinRivet, which is a new crypto-focused website. Darren Parkin has a story. Okay, so I've done an interview with Calvin Ayre, who's a billionaire by all accounts, and a big supporter of Bitcoin SV. SV standing for Satoshi Vision. And anyway, let's get back to the quotes I wanted to let you guys see. Here it is. I'm afraid I am predicting it to go to zero. Bitcoin, that is. Zero value, as it has no utility. It does not do anything, and they intentionally are anti-scaling. Really. But before we dismiss that, there was a story yesterday about someone on the advisory board of CoinDesk. I can't remember the person's name, but he said that we're all valuing crypto all wrong. We're putting way too much emphasis on the network about looking at what the network is doing. So you can have as many wallets as you like, as many transactions as you like, but what are those transactions? In the case of Bitcoin, they're not transactions in terms of digital cash, which is what Satoshi Nakamoto, the pseudonym for those who developed Bitcoin, were aiming for. So lots of these wallets are not interacting with merchant wallets. They're on exchanges, and they're of traders and others holding Bitcoin or selling Bitcoin. That could be put another way. Much of the activity on the network is speculators of one type or another, which is what Calvin Ayre is referring to when he says it has no utility, because if its utility is to be used as a means of payment, its lack of scalability, which he describes as anti-scaling, being intentionally anti-scaling. Let's not get back into SegWit and SegWit 2 times. And suffice to say, development has kind of ground to a halt on Bitcoin. I think that's a fair point. And without a proper scaling solution, if anyone did try to use it, if consumers were using it at scale, it would quickly clog up, as happened when the parabolic rise in price was taking place and more were entering the market. Consumers were entering the market, and the fees started rocketing to, what was it, $40, almost craziness. And waiting days for confirmations to come through. So he has a point, but he has a vested interest also in the opposition. So Bitcoin Cash in August 2017 was set up in order to have bigger blocks, which didn't happen on Bitcoin, although blocks were made effectively bigger by SegWit. And that's what Bitcoin Cash did. So now it has 32 megabyte blocks, and Bitcoin SV wants that to go up to huge block sizes, which they announced at their recent conference in London, or Craig Wright announced. So they are very much into solving the scaling issues of Bitcoin via Bitcoin Cash. That's how he gets to the zero value. He's not coming at this from the Dr. Doom, Nouriel Roubini school, the economist that loves to hate Bitcoin and all things crypto. He says that the lack of intrinsic value means that the price will go to zero of Bitcoin. He says no. Obviously, he thinks there is an intrinsic value, but he thinks it's just that it has no utility because its technology doesn't work, so it can't be used. Therefore, its lack of use value means its value will go to zero. But he would say that, wouldn't he? And what he does miss out is, yes, that is true, but it's not being used to buy stuff. Bitcoin, that is, BTC. Nevertheless, it still does have the longest chain in the world, which that means it's the most secure cryptographic asset in the world today. And he's not really taking that into account, so you might describe him as a Bitcoin SV maximalist for his own purposes. Okay. And just to round things up, and I want to just mention GP Bullhound, which is an advisory investment firm in the US, and they do 10 predictions. And last year they got all their predictions right, including that the crypto market would crash, which might not have been too difficult to predict, I suppose, in hindsight anyway. Oh yeah, here's that CoinDesk advisor story there. I'll go back and find that person's name, just for your sakes, people. Yeah, GP Bullhound's their predictions is crypto will recover in 2019, and it will recover on the back of institutional money flowing into the market. And I wanted to show you, folks, is there companies to watch and their coins to watch. And companies to watch has some interesting entries. Quantum, it's using Amazon Web Services for its back end. And I like Quantum because they have most of their nodes are operated in China. They're actually a Singaporean firm. Singapore is a hotbed of crypto activity and is very, very well placed. both commercially and geographically, regionally speaking, and also culturally speaking, because English is one of the official languages of the city-state, as is Chinese. Although people take me up on that, say Chinese is not a language, that must be either Mandarin or whichever. Help me. Anyway, you got what I'm talking about. Yeah, so that's significant. So that's my phone notifications coming in. I'm just looking at the quantum price because I think they were doing quite well yesterday. Anyway, 28th now. Yeah, it's still holding above 2. 6 up 16% past 24 hours. Holding just above $2. Binance, of course, they are the exchange to follow, and so it's probably worth holding some of their coin. BNB, Alibaba, obviously, they're going to do something big in crypto. It's not talked about much, but it should be. That blockchain is part of what China sees as the future industrial revolution. It's regional governments and states are starting to look at it, and because of its centralized state, it can direct and it can create through fiat, through its will, necessary regulations and interoperability. That will be more of a problem in the West, I would hazard. Okay, Bloomberg and Galaxy Digital are in a partnership. It's definitely one to follow. Coinbase, obviously. Gemini. Source Fund Management are quite big tech investors and will be worth watching. In the crypto space, Goldman Sachs have traditionally been one of the tech leaders in the investment banking world in America. As you may have noticed yesterday, they have their problems, given the Malaysian government is suing them. But IBM Stellar, that partnership is making great strides in Asia. Also, Stella's doing some stellar work in Europe on remittance payments. Ledger, yeah, they kind of got the hard wallet market sewn up. Not quite sewn up, but they are the leaders, I think it's fair to say. So, strategically important little company that's bound to be bought by someone. Revolut is European based with plans for expansion next year around the globe, America, Japan, elsewhere. And Revolut is a bit like Robin Hood, I guess you'd say. So something of a challenger bank, but app only, but also have trading in crypto on the platform. So very crypto friendly. They have something like, I believe, 3 million customers, they claim. And it's one of the few unicorns with a valuation greater than $1 billion in Europe. And it is definitely one to watch. And I don't know how big the trading volumes are on Revolut. I'm not even sure what their back end is, which exchanges they are connecting to, which crypto exchanges, for their liquidity. But the fact that they have a big footprint among the younger generation, which is also the generation most open to crypto, and the fact that those two things are brought together on their platform, crypto friendliness and young people who don't like big banks, it's a good fit and will provide and bring more exposure to the crypto space. So it's definitely one to watch. And last week, I believe, they secured a European banking license. And actually, I don't see Robinhood in this list, which is surprising. And Robinhood are similar, but ahead of Revolut. And again, as you may have spotted in the news, crypto news, financial news rather, they were going to introduce a savings account, paying 3% deposit, and checking facilities for their customers. And they didn't clear any of that with the regulators, so they've had to go back to the drawing board, which tells you something about fintechs. They seem to just think that they can do anything they like just because it's on an app or something that's a new way of doing things. They don't have to clear it with the regulator. Bizarre. Which tells us something, I guess, something not too good about the leadership team at Robinhood. Nevertheless, they have blazed the trail, especially in bringing crypto to a wider market, and their commission-free trading, which I don't think it's entirely, well, it's free to the consumer, but it's, I think they get some of that back on the spread. Okay. Yeah, I think Revolut, I think they might be commission-free also. But certainly one of our competitors here in the UK, Bucks, BUX, announced commission-free trading in stocks. And I presume that also applies to their crypto markets, although the Bucks, BUX crypto markets are based on CFDs, contracts for difference, so you're not actually buying the tokens. We'll talk about another day because it's slightly more complicated and bigger issue. It applies more in Europe because I think CFDs are banned in the United States. Other companies' partnerships to watch is obviously Intercontinental Exchanges Backed, which is launching its Bitcoin futures product. I think is January the 24th. It's definitely in January. And Backed is much more than just a Bitcoin futures product. They're also looking to build a whole ecosystem for both institutions and consumers. So that will also include custody on the one side, new institutions, and on the other side it will include the payment rails. And they have their partner on the payment side is Starbucks, which is pretty significant, and it's been somewhat overlooked, I would say, because Starbucks has 23 million people using its payments app, which puts it just ahead of Apple Pay in America. This is so Starbucks is the biggest proximity payments service. That's to say mobile payments, and that could be quite interesting. Introducing 23 million people to crypto possibilities. Now, there won't be to allow people to actually use their Bitcoin or ETH to directly buy stuff, but rather to be able to hold that on the app and quickly convert it into fiat to buy stuff, so it's indirectly being used. But nevertheless, that's going to be a big play. And the Ivy League universities, Yale, Stanford, Harvard, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, all of their endowments are investing heavily into, well, let's not say heavily, let's not exaggerate, but they are investing into crypto. And Fidelity, one of the biggest fund managers in the world, is launching its platform, its crypto platform, early next year. And I think that's going to be focused on custody to begin with. And it's moving on quickly to GP Bullhound's coins to watch. It's a very thin list, as you would expect, really. It doesn't have much faith in the tiddlers. I was going to say the shit coins, but oh, I've said it now, haven't I? It's not a pejorative I use very much. Yeah, so Bitcoin, Ethereum, Monero, and Stellar. Bitcoin and Ethereum make perfect sense. There's one missing there, though, isn't there? The second placed crypto asset in the world, which is XRP, which also explains why the maker of XRP, Ripple, isn't here. There's a company to watch, which many would find surprising. I remember going to a conference in the city a couple of months ago on security token offerings, and one of the guys ushering us in, he wasn't actually at the conference, he was just working. It was at Dow Jones headquarters in London, and he said, "Oh, I really like XRP because they've got loads of deals. I said, "Yeah, okay." Didn't want to put them off, but whenever you hear about XRP and the loads of deals that Ripple makes, you've got to know what technology the banks or other financial intermediaries making these deals, what are they planning to use? Is it X-Current or is it X-Rapid? That's to say, is it using XRP as the liquidity? That's the X-Rapid part, and that's the bit that most banks are not using for understandable reasons. You know, the price can fall from, what was the all-time high? What did they get to? Did they get to 3? Was it 2 something? But what did they get to? Yeah, 2. No, it was dollar price. Yeah, 3.65, and it's now down to 0.3. So that represents a massive risk if you want to use XRP for your liquidity. Not a good idea. Which, yeah, so they much prefer Stellar, which has its history going back to XRP. Don't think of your man behind Stellar that left. Ripple Labs and set up Stellar. Both claim to be open source. In fact, it is open source Ripple, but it's not open in the sense that you to be a node you have to be you have to get permission from Ripple. And Stellar is truly open source, and the Stellar Foundation is non-profit making. And they, as I mentioned, have some really good deals, partnerships ongoing, and projects ongoing. I'm not too sure about the inclusion of Monero. It's the privacy coin of choice these days, but the world's financial regulators don't like privacy coins. I imagine they want to kill something like Monero, but maybe not, who knows. But that's why I don't like that one. But anyway, and Ethereum, we've got to hold out hope they are going to actually introduce some technology to improve, to upgrade the platform. Again, scaling is the issue for Ethereum. And as we saw, transactions in EOS have just overtaken it. Nevertheless, Ethereum is your main second generation blockchain. EOS we might call third generation, and Bitcoin we might call first generation, because all it does is settlement. Ethereum can actually run decentralized applications, but not at the scale of EOS. Okay, I said I was going to go some Ethereum World News then. Just wanted to get this. That's Michael Casey, Chairman of CoinDesk Advisory Board. He was the one making some comments about how we need to rethink a little bit. Valuation. He made those comments to Cheddar, which is an outlet to watch. It's a new one, and we are getting a few exclusives, such as one of the Facebook hirings in crypto. Okay, I think that's it for today, and I hope you've enjoyed listening and found something useful. And keep an eye on EOS. I won't be too surprised if people start taking their profits. That tends to be what's been happening, isn't it? Every time we do get a little bit of a upturn in crypto. But let's wait and see how the rest of the week pans out in the run-up to Christmas. Waves is probably worth a mention, actually. Based in St. Petersburg, Russia. They used to have lots of scammy coins on their tokens on their network. It's a platform where you can quickly iterate token creation. So it attracted lots of scammy people creating tokens that did nothing. Although you don't have to be a scammer to create tokens that do nothing. There's quite a few probably listed here that claim to do something, but in practice don't because no one's on their networks. But anyway, Waves has been doing alright. And unlike the other coins, there's no mid-week dip, and there's had quite a smooth upward curve, a bullish week. I think that is probably because they did an update to their app, bringing a lot more stability and such. They now have an iOS and an Android app, so that may have helped. And it's a decentralized exchange, so you can obviously all the tokens that are created on Waves itself can be traded, but also now have opened up trading to the main crypto assets also, I believe. Yeah, Quantum we mentioned. Ontology is doing right for about 14%. Okay. This worth a mention. Dogecoin, gotta love Dogecoin. That's up 16%, 0.002513. Yeah, big movers. IOTA, yeah, IOTA's just done a deal with a car company, I believe, or car mark anyway. I think it was Audi, with the German car maker. I'm just going to check that I'm not talking rubbish. Pretty sure that was it. Let's just do a quick search just to confirm that. So I don't want to give you guys wrong information. Yeah. And they had some more details about their project that came out over the weekend, apparently. It's definitely one to watch. There's a hell of a lot of tech going on in the car world, from self-driving and stuff, but even before you get to self-driving, I got a Mercedes ordered on lease coming in January, and wow, I'm looking forward to that tech. it parks itself and stuff like that. And it's going to have CarPlay. I like my Apple stuff. I know it's expensive. Yeah, and part of that story is the Internet of Things, getting all of this stuff to talk to each other, and tracking all of that can be done in a distributed ledger technology such as IOTA, although IOTA uses a DAG. Okay. I think we'll finish there. Thanks for watching, and I'll get back to you tomorrow. See you, people.